Hey, what's up guys? This is Church of Caboose, and for today's Destiny 2 video, it is episode 4 of what's going on in Destiny 2. If you're new to these kinds of series, it's the new series I started doing. Basically, I was seeing all these videos, taking 15 minutes, 20 minutes to talk about one topic of drama or information that was going around the community, stuff that was just really important to the community. It's like, hey, what if I was to take all of those things that are going on, boil it down to the short and skinny, and make one video that covers all of the stuff that's been going on in between since my last video, and kind of have it be a condensed version of what's going on in Destiny 2. So that is what this whole video series is about. So if you just want the meat and bones of what's going on, this is an excellent series for you guys. So if you enjoy the video, make sure you click like. If you want to see more videos, whether it's this, my raid guides, other things like Crucible shenanigans and tips and tricks, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Alright, the first thing we're going to talk about today, and it'll be pretty brief, is Trials of Osiris. Specifically, the amount of attention the community is giving this particular game mode. When the game mode was first announced before Season of the Worthy, when they did that trailer thing, Bungie was like, hey, we're not gonna let this be half-baked. We
want to make sure that we really stick the landing with Trials. It's important that this doesn't go out half-baked.
Put tons of time and effort into it. The Season of the Worthy is basically all about Trials, which, by the way, really weird. They announced Trials and released Trials in the middle of like a seasonal expansion sort of a deal, instead of waiting for a big actual expansion like we will have in the fall with Year 4. That usually is the better time to bring in new content such as Trials, because more people are already look to get back into the game. But we're going to move on. So that first weekend of Trials, at the first weekend of Season of the Worthy, we had around 380,000 players, according to Charlemagne, playing the game mode. That's not bad. That's actually a pretty decent portion of the community. Well, for a whole bunch of reasons, the weekend of May 9th, we are down to 95,000 players playing Trials of Osiris. And I'll be real curious once this current weekend, the weekend of Trials of May 15th is over, to see if that number went down even more. And if you're wondering to yourself, Church, why is it failing so badly? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. One of them is cheaters. PC's full of cheaters, so people just obviously don't want to play Trials when there's a bunch of people cheating. Then we've got problems like lack of loot incentive, which could be a future video talking about the value of intrinsic and extrinsic values inside of a looter shooter. And then we mostly had the issues of lots of cheaters that have turned into recubs, and with the population dwindling, you are coming into recubs and cheaters more and more and more often, which makes it less fun for everyone. And the end result is that less than 95,000, or not less than, about 95,000 players played Destiny 2 Trials of Osiris this past weekend of May 9th. And if you look at the screenshots I've had kind of rolling by, you might have noticed that we had PvE in the 420,000-450,000 player range. So that's kind of weird, right? Because we got this huge PvP weekend event that's only on the weekend, which is Trials of Osiris, but people were rathering to play Crucible instead. Now, some factors for that could have been maybe Guardian Games threw off those numbers for Trials by a little bit. If you're not amazing at Trials of Osiris, getting your medals done would take a little bit longer in Trials than it would in regular, say, Control. But the numbers are also decreasing from the weeks before last week with Guardian Games, so I'm not sure that Guardian Games itself is a huge factor. I just figured someone might ask, but Church, it was Guardian Games. We all wanted to get our medals done. And I don't see Guardian Games having a huge effect, because numbers have been dropping dramatically since the first week of Trials. Now, some thoughts we have about what you could do to fix Trials, Bungie's already addressed, such as adding in adept weapons, doing different armor sets for each year, although I think it should be more often than every year, because what's going to happen is people are going to get all their loot. This is what happened to me. Get all your loot in the first month or two, and then you're like, alright, cool, done with Trials. Like, why would I put myself through all that pain? Because like, unless you're really good at Trials is kind of a pain in the butt. So once you get all your loot and you get all your rolls, like, I'm good. So I think that's going to potentially happen again with Trials of Osiris, unless we get more loot updates. As far as every year goes, it probably should be more like maybe every 5 months, because every year is a little a little too long, but maybe every 3 months is a little too fast. So maybe every something like 5 or 6 months. I don't know. Just a thought. Alright, moving on. Now let's talk about the Felwinter's Lie Legendary Shotgun Quest, the Lie Quest. It's been a big thing that just released this week with the weekly reset, and it has had already an interesting ruffle of feathers and some drama, and Bungie already made a change on like the second day that this quest was available. If you're not familiar with what the Lie Quest is, it's a community event that has multiple steps, by the way. There's more than just the initial doing a total of 9 million Guardian completions of the Seraph Towers. You have a whole bunch of steps. I don't have a screenshot of that here. We'll leave it up on the screen if you feel like trying to look at it. But the point is, we're nowhere close to being done. And when this quest was initially released, there were tons of videos and articles popping up like, oh my gosh, Bungie wants all its Guardians to fail. And story-wise, that kind of made sense, right? Because Rasputin, we were helping him by creating all of these satellites to go in the air and create a defensive block around some planets. And so we already know from data mining that some planets, or at least a planet, is either supposed to get destroyed or at the very least ran into by this almighty. So to me, it made some sense to think to myself, maybe we are supposed to fail. Maybe we all just got our hopes up about getting the Felwinter's Lie shotgun for no reason. By the way, the Felwinter's Lie shotgun was an amazing shotgun from Destiny 1. That'll be mostly used by PvP folks, and if I guess it correctly, it has a ton of range. It's also got a couple of options and trees, such as you could do slide shot or quick draw. You could do vorpal or opening shot, I believe is the two trees you can switch in and out of. And I might have called it an exotic shotgun in past videos. If I did, my mistake. It is definitely a legendary shotgun after I did some more looking, because someone else called it legendary. It's like, oh, I should make sure that I'm actually calling it a legendary, because I may have said it was an exotic. I just wanted to clear that up there real quick. So for this quest, a lot of the drama that was happening was, this is really hard. There's no point to the event. The event in general, before this community event quest thing, was really bad. The Seraph Towers had a high failure rate, meaning lots of folks would load in, try and do a tower or two, and fail. And mostly because it's in a public roaming space, there's no matchmaking, you can only have fire teams of 3. This event got harder, and it's a heroic version. The bosses are like freaking mountains. It's ridiculous, and you're supposed to try and do this with just regular fire teams and randoms hopping in. And then on day 2, Bungie said, hey, we made the champions easier. We made more progress to attunement. So now you get 10% progress per tower finished during the Seraph Tower events. You only need to do 10 towers instead of the original 11 or 12. But we still have a lot of folks that are failing. A lot of people just don't like to do this event. But we do get a multiplier of 5 during the week and by 10 on the weekend. So say you're playing on the weekend, 9 people get the Seraph Tower completed. That is 90 completions towards that 3 million for that planet. By the way, the EDZ is finished. So woohoo! Good job, guys. We got the EDZ done. Looks like the moon is the next on the list, getting some decent progress. Last I checked, it was about a third done. So hopefully, once this video is over, I can also do some contributions for this quest. Other steps after this will be things like shotgun kills all around the whole planet. And this whole thing has just been a very interesting discussion for the community, because it really did feel like at first Bungie wanted us to fail. And honestly, with the steps I saw, it made a lot of sense to me that we only had this one step. And after finding out some more data mining and looking at screenshots and whatnot, I think Bungie was like, oh shoot, we really effed up. We have so many more steps just after the Seraph Tower event step. We gotta give these guys a hand, because people are just not happy with this event. And someone pointed out in one of a stream or a podcast that I was watching, this channel name is Say No to Rage. I actually like the guy a lot. I'm allowed to listen to things when I'm at work, and he's a really cool dude, so you should check him out. But someone brought up, hey, I did some math, and I found that if most players, or maybe it was all players, did their 4 clears of the Seraph Tower for that weekly bounty that you get from Rasputin when you're in the bunker, then you would have this, if the Seraph Tower is finished, within 1 week. And so the discussion after that was, oh, that actually is a decent point. So Bungie might have grossly miscalculated how many people are still playing this event because they need to, as opposed to playing because they want to. Now let me know down below, do you enjoy the Seraph Tower events? Personally, I don't. I really don't like this whole continuous mechanic of throwing balls. I hate the balls explode if you miss, and there's not a whole lot of a visual indicator. And there's not much tracking with the orbs, and then you gotta do all this coordination, like keeping people off the plates. And now with this particular version, you gotta keep people off of 2 plates, and you're trying to do 2 towers at once, and then you got all these ads and bosses spawning in. It just seems like a lot for random fire teams of 3 loading in. Now, how can you do this event efficiently? Well, once you get it set up, it's not that bad to grind out. The trick for this event would be, if you want to do a whole bunch of these completions, maybe try and load into a tower, have a couple of friends in a party, but don't group up. Load into a tower area, then have your other friends, you all keep trying to instance into the same groups, right? So then if all 3 of you land in the same area, you can build your own fire teams and get to 9 that way. You can also invite people that are already in the area into your party and try to use them to create extra fire teams as well. Once you get those 9 people together, this event really is that bad. But at its foundation, like you mentioned with Trials, there's really not much loot. I haven't done jack squat with Wormmine builds. It just didn't really interest me. I don't find the Seraph weapons to be that great. I don't really have much of a reason myself to feel like I should be using the Seraph armor, mostly because the stat rolls on them that I get at least are absolutely god-awful. Usually they're the low 50s. Like, I have yet to get, at least from my memory, a good stat roll Seraph piece of armor, because I would have kept it because of all the ornaments and how that stuff works. So hopefully we can get through this whole event, and that's kind of what's been happening with the tower or the live quest. If you feel like you want to get that shotgun, I highly suggest you at least participate in some part of this quest. Bungie has not done this before, but it would be a huge kick in the balls for all those people that are like, I'll just let the community do all of it. I'm not going to worry about contributing. And then Bungie's like, haha, you don't get the shotgun because you didn't contribute. And like, I would personally kind of hope to some degree that's a thing. Like, it's kind of weird. You can just be like, I don't feel like participating, so I'll just reap the rewards from everyone else's hard work. That's just kind of my opinion. Like, I don't know, I feel like if you want to do a community event, you don't necessarily have to put tons of time and completions and stuff into it, but you could at least do a little bit, you know? Like, I try to do 1 Seraph Tower completion each day. Like, that's just something I try to do. For me, it's a good balance to not go insane, to not feel like I have to spend tons of time finding a large group of people, and that just works out well for me. Alright, now let's wrap this video up. We're going to finish with the TWAB. We're going to go into more depth, and there's going to be a lot of screenshots. I'm not going to necessarily read off all the screenshots. I'm going to try to leave them up for a little bit longer than I normally would. So that way, if you would like to, you can read through the screenshots as well by yourself. And I'm just going to more summarize what's in the TWAB. I wanted you guys to be able to see where I'm getting my information from, because some of this stuff could be rather upsetting depending from one individual to the next. I'll also have a link for the TWAB in the description box down below if you want to check it out and spend more time reading through all the specifics. So here is the skinny of what is happening. Bungie has noticed that, understandably, we have weapons that are a whole lot stronger than everything else. And so when you get other and more current legendary loot, you're like, why would I use this piece of gear over a mountaintop? Why would I use this piece of gear over the recluse? Why would I use this piece of gear over? And this kind of goes on and on and on. And Bungie is getting a little tired, I guess, of folks using old loot in current content. Yeah, that's the word, content. And what they're trying to do is sunset weapons, so that way you are more incentivized to go after new loot for the end game content. So the things that you currently have, you can use for the entirety of the remainder of Destiny 2. They're not trying to say you can never use Mindbenders again. They're not trying to say you can never use Recluse again. They're just trying to say for things that are power enabled, such as Nightfalls, Trials of Osiris, Iron Banner, that you need to have the new loot, or put up with being at a power disadvantage. And you do have a decent length of time for each of these pieces of gear. It seems like you get a total of 1 year after a piece of gear is acquired from that current season before it is sunsetted. So unfortunately, come fall, all of our favorite guns like Mountaintop, Recluse, Mindbenders, Not Forgotten, Luna's Howl, those sorts of weapons, anything that was from Forsaken, poof, done. You can't max power them anymore. You can't really use them at the most efficient advantage for yourself when anything is power enabled. But you can still use them in regular Crucible. And they are doing the same thing with armor. Now I found the choice to make armor something that goes away a little bit more polarizing even than the weapons, because folks, oftentimes we like going for loot, we enjoy going for weapons. When you have things that are quests, you don't necessarily mind reworking for stuff because you're like, hey, I know for sure I get this piece of gear, whereas something like a Spare Rations, when you have that god roll, you have to refine the next god roll, if you know what I'm saying. And the same thing comes from armor, but armor, for some reason, for a lot of folks, myself included, seems to be harder to come by. The armor just doesn't drop as frequently as high of the stat rolls. You have to usually do more of those end games, such as Grandmaster Nightfalls and Trials and Iron Banner, in order to have a better shot at having those god roll, stat roll pieces of armors to drop. So when I was looking through DMG's tweet, which I'm going to put right here, when I was looking through his tweet, a lot of folks seem to be more upset about the armor than they were the weapons, which I found to be rather interesting. I figured people would be really upset about the weapons because we put lots of time in for Not Forgotten, things like Recluse and Luna's Howl. If you did them when they were originally released, took a lot of time. Getting the god rolls took a lot of time. So I was really surprised to see that a lot of folks were more upset about the armor. A lot of the big name YouTubers and Twitter content creator folks that were replying to DMG were like, hey, we actually think this is a really good thing. And I kind of agree. Yes, I get it. It can be very frustrating as a player to have all your really good stuff you spent so much time for to go away. Like, I finally just got an almost god roll Mindbenders. Like, I love it so much. I just don't have a ranged masterwork, which is why it's not quite god roll. Like, I finally just got one. I'm like, oh, come on. Come fall, it's not going to be a power enabled anymore. That stinks. But that's the whole point of a looter shooter. If you don't have loot to go after, then the game gets boring and stale, which is what they were finding, when Bungie was finding, with all of us trying to use this loot. Like, we get a piece of gear and be like, infuse it into Recluse, infuse it into stuff we already had, because new pieces of gear were not very easily trumping the old pieces of gear. And I think that Bungie tried to kind of fight this a little bit by doing War Mind cells and those War Mind cell mod builds, as well as the Charged with Light mod builds, by incentivizing you to use things like Seraph weapons. And it just wasn't working as well as I think they thought it would. Like, for example, I mentioned this earlier, I don't really ever mess with the War Mind cells. So this whole point of the TWAB was to try and explain all the sunsetting, and here's a quick screenshot about what future pieces of gear will look like. You can see current power, then you see the power limit, so that tells you how high you can get that weapon, and then seasonal power gap. Time will tell exactly what power limit and seasonal power cap will mean. My guess is we'll have a future like, hey, this is the highest this piece of gear could ever be. This is the highest piece of gear that it could be this season. So I'm thinking that's what the difference is between the power limit and the seasonal power cap. The limit, how high it can be, and how high it can be in that season. Alright guys, I hope this video helped you all out with understanding what's going on in Destiny and broke down some of the more important parts of the TWAB and what's going on with the Seraph Towers. Please let me know if you have any input that you would like to add in. If you have anything you've seen floating around the Destiny community that you think I should cover in a next What's Going On in Destiny 2 video, please let me know down below. You're also welcome to join my Discord server, Church and Friends, and we can team up and share ideas. And who knows, if you like doing thumbnails and stuff, I will also give people credit for anything that they try and suggest and say, hey, you should try and do this for a video, or why don't you talk about this? I'll do my best to make sure you guys all get the credit. I'm really excited for the fall. I'm trying not to get so hyped that I get really let down. I'm really looking forward to sunsetting and chasing after new gear, because I'll be honest, it's been kind of old having the Mindbenders and all like the auto rifle metas that doesn't include almost anything new. Like Spare Rations and Gallard are like the newest stuff that I can think of off the top of my head as far as seasonal, when things were dropped and released content goes, for what we use in the Crucible. I am Church of Caboose. Have a great week and happy grinding, y'all.